Morning, everybody.
Good
Morning.
morning. This is awesome. Um, well, this is our get ready with me and coffee talk. I wonder, well, who are we?
Okay.
We should.
We are very barely awake, ladies. I'm Misha B, she, they. I am a gamer and writer and editor and sensitivity editor for tabletop RPGs and LARPs. I'm one of the founding curators of More Seats at the Table, which is a currently tri-weekly newsletter dedicated to highlighting people from marginalized genders who write games and the games they write.
I'm Laura Simpson. I'm a game designer. I'm a UX designer full time. I've designed Companion's Tale. It's a Emmy nominated indie groundbreaker winning Game of the Year 2020 game. I've also authored some nano games, and hopefully something really creative will come out of pandemic, and I'll keep writing games. We'll see.
We have to know. Apparently, my kid has stolen my copy. So
What? Oh, that's a crime. Children, you can't do that.
it's in the next room. It's not far.
Right. I was like, "Ooh, such violence this morning." Who am I? It's 7 here in this beautiful dreary world that I live in. I live in looks like the Moors are waiting for me out there. They're not. I'm Jonea Kemper, and I am that's right. I'm a game designer, and I guess academic. I definitely academic. Don't listen to me. And I work with LARP and tabletop and video game design and specialize in creating and building diverse worlds, but also exciting and new worlds. And I love that delicious goth shit. I'm the designer of Feeding Lucy, Bodega Cats, and I've done a bunch of wonderful modules for games like Visigoths versus Molgoths, and other games. So, yeah, we are going to chit chat while we get ready. Are we all barefaced?
We are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cleanser. This is just my face.
This is what I look like.
Yeah.
Most days.
I don't think I've appeared anywhere without eyeliner. This is serious.
Yeah, I think I used to wear a bit more makeup, and then things just got super hectic, and it became I'm just gonna do this for this one thing. Oh, I'll just do it for this event, and then all my makeup expired. I was like, okay, I need to just dump all this, and I'll just start again. And then I don't know.
I have a tiny goth link in the next room who started stealing my makeup, and so I was like, well, fine, if you're gonna wear makeup, apparently I have to wear makeup. So we occasionally have makeup offs. It's kind of amusing. They're still asleep, or else I'd drag them in here. Oh, they do my makeup for streams now. It's great.
Well, okay, hold on. Let's talk about that. So, one of the things, about this conversation is we get to talk about relevant game things and design and other things while we get ready. Let's talk about streams. I think this streams are very interesting in our community and both wonderful and also slightly controversial. And also, yeah, every other week. But they also provide a lot of really interesting looks into what we wear, what we do, and how we perform on camera. So, folks, there was a recent big Twitter question that I thought was quite wonderful, in which people were talking about, well, if people are dressing up, Like, what are we saying? Like, what are we doing when we play in a tabletop? Like, are we in character and acting? Like, I feel like this is the big question that keeps getting asked. Like, are we acting? Are we playing? I have my own opinion, but
I think it's both, right?
I think there's definitely some like image management. So I think I have like less streaming experience. Like I've streamed in situations where I'm where it's like my game and I'm like kind of representing myself as a designer. So I'm not really, I'm not really streaming as Laura the player. I'm being Laura Simpson. I'm like the game designer of this game, and I need to like have a certain image. I'm like a part of a game imprint. It's a very small one, just 2 people. So I have to like I have to have half the image of it. And ta-da, girl definition. So like a lot of it is like trying to present myself as like something that can be screen capable, something that's like, okay, this is who I am. Because otherwise, I'm not. I think most of my interactions with people are analog, where I'm like on a panel and I'm usually wearing business casual or something, because that's like I can't be bothered to have 2 wardrobes. Although clearly,
I love this.
It's a good look.
Yeah,
It is.
If I was on something in the last year, I might have reached for this because it's just like, oh, this is kind of like
effortless.
Yeah, just kind of like pop it on. For people at home, I'm wearing a nap dress, the thing that was popular on social media. I'm not paid for any of that. I went out and bought this. It's like,
for those of you who like me had to look up a nap dress, it's like ruched at the top and it's tiered.
Yeah, like it's tiered. It's like a modernization of a Regency gown.
Yeah, it reminds me. I looked it up yesterday. It reminded me of a camise à la reine, which is it was made popular by Marie Antoinette and the entire French government. They were like, you know what? You wearing comfortable clothing is a step too far. But it was actually it was a dress created and designed in the islands that the UK enslaved. So Creole women actually came up with this dress to be worn in a hot as fuck climate. Don't forget, friends, you can ask us questions as we're going. This is a great time to ask us questions because we're very great. We're amazing designers who often don't get the time to do this. So please ask us questions about your games, ask us questions about trends in tabletop role playing, etc. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I also think, I got to be honest, I want to say this because I think it's true, and I didn't realize this until you mentioned this, or not, no one mentioned this, but until we actually all started to, I'm still waking up, until we all started getting ready, which is, how often do you see the regimens of Black women anywhere? Like, you are about to see the beauty regimens of 3 different Black women. Not like entirely, but it is a thing. I feel like I don't see this often enough.
No, like I honestly, I only see it with like beauty influencers, like, honestly, the whole hair thing today, I have a very I have a very like kinky coily texture. So usually I've watched hours of people saying, if you do these 3 easy steps, you're gonna have like springy curls, and I'm like, you guys are a bunch of liars. And
they're a lie.
A, you're lying. B, you have a different hair texture.
Yes. I feel like that's like something that people like sometimes will bring up, and they're like, no, it's like, it's all like, you're just wrong. I'm like, you guys are trying to convince me that someone who starts with curls, wets their hair, has curls, and then puts product in their hair and there's curls, has the same texture as somebody who when my hair is dry, there are no curls.
There
Like no curls. Like only when
and
it's
small curls.
like yes, like
Yeah.
total like pen springs. So I was just like, well, I'm gonna do my hair and I'm gonna do my skincare today, which might be like pretty nice.
So we do have 2 questions.
Oh, I love this.
What are the current trends in RPGs, and which ones do we think will appear? And what personal design or work project are we most excited for? Trends.
Ooh. I'll let y'all go first.
I'm bad at predicting trends, so I'm not even going to try to predict a trend. Although the current conversation I'm seeing is about violence in RPGs.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which, so the first game I played was Earth Dawn, like years ago, in college. I was one of those weirdos who did not start with D&D. So there are of us out
Me too.
E3.
Yeah. So don't feel bad if you didn't start with D&D. It's fine. There's other ways to get into this. But even then, the game was about, okay, you've got to go and kill a monster of some sort, even if you are playing somebody who is not human. So the stories we choose to tell are often, and I am a big person who believes that games are just stories that we tell in a way, with some mechanics for if there's some uncertainty about which way we should go from here. Although you can also completely play a game without dice or anything like that. It's a thing. You can do it. I trust you. I've played a campaign for like 6 years now where we have not rolled a single die. It's just the two of us. We go, hey, would this be cool? And the other person says, yeah, it'd be cool. Or how about if we did this instead? That's all the mechanics you need.
People forget that.
Right?
I mean, none of my games have dice.
Yeah. And they're great.
Go ahead, Misha.
What was I saying?
No dice.
Lost the thread. Oh, so trends, yes. So violence in RPGs is a thing that is probably always going to be around, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with it. It's just a matter of, okay, is that how you choose to tell the story? Is that how you choose to and if you're making games, is that the thing you want to incentivize? Like if you're making a game where you get your experience or whatever you want to call it by killing things, that is what you have chosen to incentivize. If you make a game where you get your experience, your bonuses, whatever it is, by talking, that is the thing you've chosen to incentivize. So it's just a matter of choice. There's not necessarily inherently anything wrong with violence in games. In real life, it's different, and everything depends on situation. But yeah.
I think listening to this, I think one of the things that is becoming, I don't think it's a trend, but I think it's a growth, is that the more people from not in the United States or not in the United States specifically, as well as not in Europe specifically, the more that people get voices into the tabletop community, the more we find different ways of storytelling. And I want this because for many of us, I don't think people realize how differently other cultures, other places tell stories, right? And what they put the emphasis on, rather what we put the emphasis on, or what someone else puts the emphasis on, right? The way stories are told are completely different. So I think one of the things we're starting to see is all of these interesting, amazing games that are telling stories not in the way that we would tell them, right? And I love that. I want more of that because, one, it's exciting, and two, finding different formats and ways to play, I think, only helps us to create bigger and better worlds, because I believe tabletops help us, you know, all role playing kind of helps us to imagine something else, right? And in the times we're going through, being able to imagine something else is like critical. So, of like trends, those are the things I'm loving. One trend I am not loving is the amount of dice. Like, do we really need this much dice? Do we really need
But
these?
they're pretty.
Well, what am I supposed to do with this many dice?
I do want to make a bag of ice.
I saw somebody use them as vase filler, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Ooh,
Okay.
that's an idea." But yeah, I like shady clack clacks. I don't use shady clack clacks 90% of the time, but I like shady clack clacks.
People forget that you do not have to actually roll the die. I think that's wild. They're like, okay, but like, how do you get your players to roll for it? I don't want them to roll for it.
I think that's just really more ways to do conflict resolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like what Misha said. The type of play you reward is the type of play you'll see.
Mm-hmm.
And as a designer, you have to really take that into consideration. Where it's not just about. It's not like yes, there's well trod like mechanisms and like systems and like cultural elements that you fold right in that you easily reach for. But I think also it's worth being really thoughtful about how, like, what you want, what type of experience you want people to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you want people to sit there and argue about THACO, I've probably done that. Like, I've only spent a few months of my life doing that, and I'm never going to do it again. Like, that, it doesn't feel like a good use of my time. Then that's like you put your emphasis there. But if you want them to be talking about like larger than life, like fantasy, you have to make the pathway for them. And
yes,
that's, I feel like that's something. I think there's quite a few game designers who do think about that a lot. And I think that it's something that's easy to kind of overlook. Because you're trying to fit into a particular mold as opposed to wanting to like really drill into that experience and really just tease apart, well, how do I make this happen for my players? Because everything I write, I assume I will never be there. I will not be there when they're discussing how to make this happen. And I think like I think most designers think about that. Like, I will not be there. Like as a UX designer, like designing interfaces, I will not be there. I had to make an interface good enough for you to be able to do it on your own. So I take that into game design very seriously. Yeah, like trend wise, I'm kind of excited about seeing games that are taking on like a different sensibility, exploring different genres. I was excited about Molkov's versus Visigoff's. I think Yumeza's Bed and Breakfast. I'm sorry.
Oh, Yaziba's Bread and Breakfast. Yeah, that look. See, this is what I'm talking about. Innovative mechanics. Okay, J Dragon. So the first time I met J Dragon was at like Living Games. And then there was a game they had called like Queer Messes. And that was an amazing kind of like, it was like a game, you involved strings and a circle, and it's like the messiness of like, but like the joyfulness of a queer community. And this is what I'm talking about. I want to see like really innovative mechanics. Sure, you can throw dice, you can balance it, but like this is something I talk to my game design students about, right? Like, what are the cool things you can get people to do to mitigate conflict, which is like what you're doing, but also to tell a story. And I love that. Like, I love when we think about how we can collectively tell this story and bring these things to life outside of the realm of dice, tarot cards, right? Like some of the things we've seen a lot of. What can we play with? Like, what can you make a game out of, and how can we figure out where we're going that does not involve the same things? Innovative innovative mechanics. That stuff rules the world. And I know that there's like that big raging debate on like, oh, once you learn, we hate learning a system. We hate learning a new system. And I'm like, yes, but not everybody tells stories the same way. And not every game is meant to tell every story, right? Like,
and not every person is good at math. I mean, when you start involving dice and adding shit, like you're putting people on the spot. Like, I'm amazing at math, and I can do like the numbers in my head, but I've seen people like struggling. It's like, okay, and that's a thing you gotta account for.
Honestly, I like outsourcing that sort of thing to an app. Like, honestly, I play a ton of video games. Like, so to me, it seems so, it's kind of surprising and disappointing considering how many games come out every year that especially, and I'm not saying that tabletop players are the same as video game players. However, video games have different systems. Even between games within the same series, there's variances. And so that's part of learning a new system. Although I will say a lot of the planning and I would say mental load is being set aside, and there's a lot of research on how to make an effective tutorial so that you can easily segue into the game. So I'll caveat that a bit, but I think that there's a lot to explore out there, and there's shorter games. You don't have to frankly, every time I spent years playing D&D and Vampire the Masquerade, often I'd have to refresh myself anyway. So it's not like one and done, or after you do your first campaign, all the rules. I'm like, I know vaguely the rules, but you want passing around.
I barely remember the rules for my character. Okay.
The amount of times I've had to ask people what we're doing in Thirsty Sword Lesbians, and I wrote a whole module. It has nothing to do with the game. I have ADHD. This is another thing. Think about accessibility. For me, I often don't play large D&D games with people who do not understand that it takes me a hot second to do the math. Which, as a side note, because so many streams are with D&D, you're shutting out a large amount of people who have anxiety about, oh, then I have to do damage 40%. People aren't always doing the math for you. We have more questions.
Yes.
Do we have personal design things that we are excited for? And then we have a nice big question about romance tabletop RPGs, which I know we'll get into. So any personal things?
Let's see. Right now I'm spitballing, doing brainstorming with the other half of Supertail Press, Deb Percasta, about a space. If you have met Dev, he loves space. He loves space opera so much.
I love a good space opera.
Right? So we were talking about how to do space opera with a heavy political bent, but also we started talking about actual space. So I didn't know. So me, not a physics person. I mean, I could do some systems thinking, but I did not know a lot about space. And so he got to watch my face fall. So I was like, wait, are you saying we're not going to leave Earth? And he's like, well, and I'm like, we're not going to go to the stars? It's not going to be Babylon 5?
How could you?
There was a whole discussion. And then I was like, but then we were like, okay. But we can work with that. We could do something. We could do something smaller, or But so I think there's there's some room for something exciting, because I really love creating interconnected plots. And he really loves space, so we'll just see what comes out of that.
See. Things I'm currently working on. I'm still finishing up. We're working on Nightingales, which is a LARP about nursing in times of war.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, it's one of those, you know, the panini happened and everybody kind of like, and so yeah, it's there and we're working on it. It's just going through some growing pains because, you know, it's one of those, okay, I got to get back into that brain space. And then I try to get into that brain space that was before the panini, and it doesn't really work all the time. So yeah, that's a thing. And then at some point, Rob Bull gave us a mostly finished game called Demi Humans, which we're working on. Okay, I'm working on tweaking so that it tells more the story that I want to tell. Because the base is there and it's well done, and it's like 90% there. And as everybody knows, it's always that last 10% you're that takes.
Oh yeah, you're always pushing that over the line there.
Yeah,
every time.
It takes forever.
Yeah,
pushing up that hill.
Yeah.
So the thing I'm actually excited for is under extreme NDA. Yeah, that sounds fancy.
Fancy. I can't tell you about it.
I can tell you I can tell you all the things that won't get me sued. I can tell you that I got to do some of my favorite historical research. I do a lot of research when I contribute to anything, and this let me go back to a place that I genuinely love. But the thing I will tell you about it is that it's with someone I'm a dear friend of, and they had some wonderful successes. And they were like, I know who can write me something creepy. So something creepy and glitchy. I know who's got it. And that's my favorite thing. Is like when you know people and they are like, I need this, they come to you. So if you are hoping to be a creepy designer, in the ways of that, you know how to make some good horror, or you know how to make just like some really good deep suspense, or you know, that kind of, I don't know, I call it puppet horror because it's like the 1980s kind of slasher fun puppets and melty horror, you know, that kind of feel. So that is my jam. Yeah, other than that, I actually, during my day job, work at Carnegie Mellon on a project that works co-designing games with children. So often I get to make many, many digital games with children in various places. And one of them is a horror game that we're making. And here's the thing, I don't pick the theme. I walk in and they tell me what they want. And this group said, we want a horror game. That's what we want. So these children wanted a horror game, and without me prodding. And I was like, oh, okay, I got you. So now I'm like having to translate Bratz dolls into like creepy horror minions, because these kids are like, yeah, give us creepy dolls. And I'm like, all right, kids, I'm here. Okay, that's what you want? Make more blood. You're like, oh, you ask their opinions. They're like, not enough blood. And I'm like, why? Why are you like this? I don't know. I'll accept it. Woohoo. So that's the other thing I'm kind of excited for. So about romance, TTRPGs.
Yes.
Let's get into that.
Yes, please.
First of all,
always.
Anything could be a romance. Anything could be a romance TTRPG if you try hard enough, friends.
If you try hard enough.
I mean, the existence of a horny bard as an archetype in D&D is proof. Yes, right. Is proof that, you know, anything can be romanceable in an RPG. If you just, you know, they're adventurous enough. Romance in yeah. I do a lot of play-by-post games.
Oh.
I do. Just because I find I primarily shuttle kids around all day. Like, I have two of them, and they have activities, and so it's like, all right, drive, sit, drive, sit, drive, sit, drive, sit. That's my afternoons most days. So I find myself with a lot of time on my hands, and I find Play by Post is a nice bite size enough that you can say, okay, I'm gonna read the responses that have come in, type out a quick one, go about my day, and I can kind of pick this up throughout the day and throughout the week and the weekends and stuff. So I've got quite a few of them going at the moment. But like a couple of them can get completely smutty. And do like one of my favorite RP partner has gotten extraordinarily smutty, and I love it. Exploration of poly relationships and all kinds of things, and but also there's like the sweet moments, oh, you brought me the first time the characters are sitting down and having that first conversation and talking about their dreams and hopes and all the things that you talk about when you're doing that mushy getting to know you start at the part at the beginning. Because I've been married for nearly 20 years, and so like some of that is in the past. And so getting to relive it somewhat through a character is fun. So yes, romance RPGs, go for it.
I mean, I like it a lot. Like it's something I would say it's I guess it's not in everything I've written, but like in the biggest thing I've written, it's there. Like
so there, I love it.
Thank you. So like it's there like as a default, like because it's like understanding that it that it's something in a story. It's an option, right? It's if you're telling a story about people, even if they're doing like epic things or not so epic things, like there's romance around, and it's a nice option for players to pick up in the core game. But also, then there's just a straight up variant where it's all about like lovers telling the story of this person. So I'm a fan. I think it's something where I really love having a variety of players like at the table, because then everyone brings something to romance, and if you're able to set up the situation where they can bring some insights, they don't have to play. They can play with tropes, but they don't have to like play into them. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
I think some of my favorite romance tabletop. So one of the things I loved about romance, it's the same thing, right? Like exactly what you're saying, right? I love it's like it can be really fun if you are someone who responds to and likes romance. I'm a big fan of I can hear it in my mind. It's the Regency. It's the what is it called?
Like romance novels, like Bridgerton?
No, the game. The game.
The game.
I play it all the time.
Yes, I have that.
Good Society?
Yes, Good Society.
Yes.
Let me tell you about Good Society. I played a Russian novel version of Good Society with Cat Ramen. And Cat Ramen, let me tell you, is brilliant and amazing, and I cannot sing her praises enough.
I think I said in a different episode of the same game, same scenario, but
I was getting my Natasha Pierre, the Great Comet of 1816 on. I played this super cute, like completely not so smart heiress. And like I got to use my French skills, and you're writing letters and you're doing the slow burn. I think that works so well. Also, Eric Mersman ran a wonderful Monster Hearts Regency game that was yes, Regency Monster Hearts. Eric Mersman is amazing, and like I got to play like these types of things. I love like Monster Hearts is really great for romance. because it lets you get deep and dark. If you want to get super like pathos, but not as steamy, depending on who you're talking to,
Mhm.
I think Good Society is a great one. And then there is Thirsty Sword Lesbians. Yeah, I played in a little jam run by Jen Martin. That was like, I got to make this like cute, clueless little Thimbo who was like, I'm just gonna eat my feelings.
Aww.
I love this person. I'm gonna eat my feelings and cry. And I feel like eh, I feel like blah, 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 apocalypse world type games where you have strings on other people, games that
Yes.
actually bring in deep relationships, right? Where your relationships matter are some of the best ways to play with romance.
Absolutely. I played this really fantastic Monster Hearts game, but I was just this angsty little teenager who's like trapped into her family's expectations. Um, and it really was like we actually cut pieces of yarn and it kind of became unmanageable, but it's like it was a
Oh, I
fun
love
tactile thing.
that.
It was
What a great
like there was a
idea.
really great visual way to say like, oh, okay, who's got someone over a barrel, or just and it was a really fun way to kind of explore these ideas of like, well, there's romance and we're monsters and we're feeling very angsty about how everything's going.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, that was it really helps. Like it's I think I really enjoy how quickly like you can jump in and build those attachments. That's something that um, I think that those games do really well, especially. And also, I like um, how momentum gets propelled, like having countdown clocks and things like that, where it helps like accelerate the drama and set up some stakes for players to push against. Ooh.
Get you a stamp. ColourPop makes a cutie mark, kind of a. And let me tell
I
you,
shall have
back in
to
the
find them.
day, we used to have to do
Right.
these shapes. But
Yeah,
Laura,
yeah, no.
but what you're saying, Laura, I think is, yeah, I think all of this goes back to what we said at the beginning, which is like, you make these games and like you have to think about what your mechanics are, and your mechanics have to support the story. So if you're going to play romance tabletop, if you're going to make one, if that's something you're interested in, what mechanics can you make that support the story? I've made sex larps. I can't believe I get to say that at like 7 in the morning. But I used to do sex education and making feeding Lucy. First of all, getting people to test a game in which you're asking them to sleep with each other is very interesting. Uh, it's like, oh, friends, I need your help. Ooh, thank you. But it is play tested. So, like, how do you create intimacy with mechanics? Right? Y'all pulling strings, like having the actual strings, those physical reminders. Kat Ramen wrote me a letter in French. Do you know that I framed it?
Oh my.
I doubt Kat's watching this, but Kat, I framed that letter. I looked at it. Every time I pass it, I'm like, it's on
Ash,
parchment,
nice.
Ooh.
Those ephemera, right? That come out of games. It's so.
I love it.
Ash Kreider and I were playtesting their game of. It's a letter writing game where you're two lovers. I mean, you there. It's indefinable at what stage of the relationship you're in. Like you can pick which stage you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were these two fae from different clans, and it was like I got stuck on the moral plane, and Ash's character was stuck in fae, and so we were like sending messages through butterflies and deer and shit. You know, it was great. It was, but we got to write, and but all the conversation between the characters happened through their letters.
Oh,
So it was like,
wow.
so they had these like missives of, and you were kind of we were playing, we hadn't actually done anything yet, so we were dancing around the will they, won't they line, like, hey, but neither of us would like actually come out and just say, do you like me, for God's sake?
Love that.
It's the best.
The tension must have been amazing.
It was so good. And it was a play-by-post game, because, since it's all done with letters, you have time to sit and marinate in it and decide, okay, how do I want to reply to this?
I love it.
I love that. I love that. I think some of my favorite experiences in games have been with romance. And I think folks always, and I think this is once again a problem when we talk about like North American ideas of like, or like not North American, because I can't bring Mexico into this. I'm about to be shady. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough to say that Mexico is about this. But there's like a Western idea of storytelling where violence is accepted to be taught, right? Violence is more acceptable. But you know what's not? Romance. So everyone feels awkward. You can go to a LARP and you can beat the shit out of each other with foam swords. Yeah. You can toss each other around in a game. But if you say, my character has always loved you, together we will be together through the ends of time. Suddenly that's too much, right? But you can punch me in the face, right? Yeah, you can't fuck, but you can punch me in the face. So I feel like we need to talk about how, like,
I think it goes back to like Puritans and who colonized this part of the world, and okay, if you get all the guys who even England thought you were too strict, and you ship them across, you're gonna get
England is telling you, but don't listen to the British.
Yeah, right.
They do more than they say.
It's we've come up to a culture where like two guys even hugging is they must be into it. No, they're just fucking friends, people. I'm cursing too much now.
I also think though it's some of those puritanical values, but also like the fear of racial mixing, like sex, like the other, we can't. So it just kind of helps clamp that down. And it creates this situation where on our media, violence is just way more acceptable than like people having like these intimate relationships, or relationships are expected to crescendo at this point where you agree to be together forever, no matter what, and then you ride off into the sunset and we're done.
And the person the one is supposed to be your BL, and they're supposed to be your best friend, and this and this and this, and they're supposed to be everything to you. And you're not supposed to have other friendships or relationships outside of that core. And it's like, that's
you don't explore the relationship any further. It's not like the struggles of, okay, so how do we actually make this work? Like we're into each other, but what happens now?
Yeah.
We've overcome these obstacles. But somebody starts to wash dishes at the end of the day. It's like
someone does. We have one. We're coming up on time, but we have one other question. Do y'all want to read it?
Sure. Thoughts on explicit /18+ RPGs in spoken form? Yes. As long as everybody at the table's into it. I mean, that's pretty much my stance on just about anything. Like, as long as everybody at the table agrees to it, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm like, the spoken form thing throws me, like...
Oh,
as
like
opposed to video games, I guess?
You, let me just... Is it like me describing what happens? I'd be like... Once again, I wrote a sex LARP, so... I don't know. I think, to be honest, questions like this, I really just say... Look at who you're with. Look at who you're at the table with, right? Like, if I'm comfortable with the people around the table, I can do whatever I feel in my comfortability to do. especially if I'm not streamed. When it's streamed, you're putting yourself in front of other people, and it's a whole performance. But if you're at a home game and all the people understand why they're there, like, your limits on what you can do change. So,
and I think I agree. Sorry. Like I think also if you set your safety ground rules, like it's like honestly if get your consents. Like there shouldn't. I think there shouldn't be any surprises. I think that when it comes down to sex, there are things that might be surprising that happen within the bounds of consent, but there shouldn't be any surprises about the consent. That's the consent. So yeah, like I think that's your audience.
There's definitely especially if you're going to be doing this face to face and in area, it's like you are going to have to say, okay, these are the things I find acceptable. These are the things I don't find acceptable. And within those realms, there's a lot of things. It's like, okay, I'm okay talking about anal, but I don't want to, talk about the details of anal, if that's what, those are some things that might have to come up if you're going to actually get explicit. Some people are like, okay, I'm cool with talking about this, but can we not make eye contact while we're doing it? Because, that gets it's like, okay, that's a fair boundary.
Turn out the cameras if you're doing it digitally, right?
Yes.
There are ways you can do that. If you're embarrassed, not everybody can look directly into somebody's eyes and cripple them until they fall into
Sometimes you just have to swoop into a room wearing a tiara and a full glass cape to make Janaea fall into a puddle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I have digital proof.
It's happened. I easily embarrass, so I can do terrible things, but I can't. I'm like,
yeah.
Yeah. I personally find it easier to do explicit stuff written than spoken, and that's a me quirk, and that's a totally fine thing. And just know what your limits are and express those limits if you're going to do it.
And definitely play with people that you trust and will respect your limits.
All right, so we got 2 minutes left. Do we want to tell people where they can find us later in life, in today, and all that fun stuff?
So you can find me on Twitter, LabMouse, just the way it sounds. You can find my games at Indie Press Revolution. They have campaign sale, and Roll20 has the digital version of it. Yeah.
You can find me at Violet Riot Games, where I talk shit but can back it up. I feel like that's the best way to find me. There, then. Hold on.
And you can find me on Twitter as BG Gameworks or on my website, blackgirlgameworks.com.
I can't believe I actually managed to get ready.
Yeah, right. I was challenging myself to use one color palette. It's what I got I got one of those Cosbox things, so it's Teddy Girl. Lots of lovely shades of red, which I don't usually do. It's like reds and oranges and kind of plums. Yeah. So this is what we ended up with.
It's great. Like I did all skincare, so
you're
a bunch of.
You are.
You look so good.
So hydrated.
Okay, so free promo, Black Girl Skin Sunscreen. Black Girl Sunscreen.
Oh, I gotta find that.
Let's not leave me
Target.
ashy. Yes.
Yes, they have Black Girl Skincare. Black Girl Sunscreen in Target, people. Go get it.
I did not know that. I have to go get that.
It's so good.
I'm like,
no ash at all.
That's
after years
like,
of being
seriously? You
seriously
good. Like, that skin is supple.
I'll give you the skincare stuff I'm using. Like CosRX, lots of Korean skincare.
They're playing us off.
We're like, this is how great Laura's skin is. It's amazing. It's that good. Thanks for letting us talk about. Yeah, I love how we ended with completely dirty role playing games, and also